I did this kind of thing, so I worked in finance, and while I studied filmmaking and specialized in screenwriting, and that's where, what, you do? Okay, good. And did my PhD in international political economy, management of crisis mostly. I've lectured on the subject, among them objectivism, and yes, I was found out after a while, after 2 years, to be precise, when the head of department came up to me at a party and asked that, "Who's this guy you're teaching about?" And, oh my God, you didn't even Google it, right? And I was asked not to do that anymore. So, but I'm also a blogger, sadly in Hungarian, so that's like, doesn't attract very wide following. And yeah, I mean, all this kind of from TV productions and that kind of thing. So if there's something out there, I've probably done it at some point, like doing auctions and whatever, everything pretty much. And I'm not good at public speaking for two reasons. One is that I never learned how to, and whenever I practice, it was the people who had to listen for the marks at the end of the semester. And also because public speaking means that people are in a certain role, in a certain mindset. So you are now interns listening to someone spreading wisdom. So that's a role, that's a kind of thing that you're stuck in. And it's really hard to manipulate someone who's self-conscious that way. Also because I am present, for instance, and other people are present, so you can try to align themselves with other people, and it just lowers the efficiency of communication. So if you want to try to convince someone of something, try to, get them in a one-on-one, because it's probably not the best way of doing it. And private speaking, on the other hand, is very much like, and by private speaking, I also mean writing stuff. Like, you have a one-on-one with your audience. When you write a blog post, you write a novel, you write something, and they read it. And because you're not even there, you cannot be self-conscious that way, you get that undivided attention for a while. They are not in any of their roles. And that's the kind of situation you want. I mean, you want to talk to the individual, just the individual, or at least decide which self of theirs you want to address. Because you can invoke certain selves of that individual that way. And so it's filmmaking. You get 90 minutes, 120 minutes of undivided attention from people who are actually just watching. And you can get them from here to there. The way you work with your protagonist in the story, it's like convincing someone of something. And that's huge. And also people normally, I mean, I know there are people who go to the movie to be social. I've seen that, and to have a go with their phones and eat a lot of popcorn and stuff for nutritional value. But if you really want to watch a movie, and a lot of the people just do it at home and alone, and for the same reason, because you really pay attention to this. So that's the kind of communication I like to talk about, how to convince people, this kind of conversation, because it's a bit like telling your story. And of course, I'm not going to give like screenwriting or creative writing ideas, because please shower your person with water at some point. At the 2/3 of the story, you have to get them cleansed, so washing their hand, or going in the rain, or jumping into a river, or meeting water somehow. And beforehand, just when the dark night of the soul moment comes, they have to see their reflection somewhere. Just look into a mirror, water, whatever. Okay, so I'm not going to ruin on your movie experiences in that way. Just saying that this is not the kind of thing I'm going to talk about. But it is similar, because you want to take your protagonist, your audience, and take them from here to a new balance. So they are balanced that way, and then you have to kind of rewire them, and they have to do a lot of arguments, because you just pick one little element of freedom and talk about that. They can still default back on wherever they were, because it's just so out of their world. And for that, you have to very thoroughly understand your protagonist. So when you write a script, you have to know a lot about that person. Even if it's a fictional person, you have to know things that you don't tell anyone about his childhood, about his convictions, because otherwise this person wouldn't be real, and you say it's not a convincing character. And the same applies when you want to convince someone. You have to know that person, and this is why it is very simple. Oh yes, of course it works. It is very similar to writing the story. Also, you make your protagonist to go on a journey, and you actually decide where they go. But it never happens in the same episode. It's maybe the next series when you least expect it. So you can be the catalyzing force. You can tell this person something that they need to hear. But it's not going to happen in the same session that they will just come and, oh my God, you totally changed my mind. I'm converted. I know I follow you. And if anyone does that, just please run. Okay, it's not the kind of thing. So convincing people is not in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or an hour. What you do is prepare them to convince themselves, to make the decision themselves, because you cannot present an argument as good as they can present themselves. But in order to make that kind of catalyzing role, you have to know a lot of things. And first of all, you have to go where that person is and meet him there. So don't just shout things over the fence, don't call them staties, don't call them names, and then try to insult them, and because that doesn't appeal to actual outsiders, it appeals to your in-group, because in-group communication and outreach is very different. So what works for getting into the liberty movement and getting ahead within the liberty movement does not work outside. So for instance, and I'm talking very extreme cases, obviously, just to make my point, within a movement or any kind of, it can be any religion or anything, you get confirmation for reacting with the right cliches upon hearing the right buzzwords. So that's the kind of thing that Jesus said, whatever. It happens in every kind of in-group. Or if you quote the right author at the right time, it just makes you smart and everything. Or when you manage to dismiss someone's argument before even listening, and your peers may approve of you and will applaud you and everything, that yes, you are militant, yes, you're principled and everything, and you don't even listen to that stupid argument. But that doesn't look good for the outsiders, and it's not unlike religious bigotry. And also what works within a movement is purism. So you're principled, you have your values right, or name it however you want, and whoever has this greatest amount of purity will win. Now, I tell you how these things look for the outsider. So if you're reacting with cliches upon buzzwords, they will dismiss you as a robot. So you don't necessarily listen to what they say, you just try to pick a buzzword that this is what they talk about, so I know I'm just on cue and I'm going to say whatever I'm supposed to say. Or if you're just quoting other people, that may be actually difficult to remember the right quote, the right time and whatever, but it doesn't mean it actually delivers the message, and it looks like, no original thoughts, you're brainwashed, you just read a lot of one kind of things and not enough of the other, so that doesn't work. Also, if you look like this very principled, militant, whatever person, if you're just a peer person, it's not worth talking to. People don't want to meet you again, that's not what you want. And of course, if you play the purity game, you're just a bigot. And this is how the in-group confirmation looks like for an outsider. Also, I'm not going to talk about how to feed trolls or fundamentalists, or it's not about that. So if you get a dark green socialist and they are just that set to attack the word capitalism, whatever they mean by that, I'm not talking about how to convince them. Okay, that's not the session about that kind of thing. And never feed trolls, by the way. Troll always wins. There's no such thing as intellectually defeating a troll, because there's nothing intellectual about trolls, and there's no such thing as defeating them. Okay, so that's I'm not going to talk about this. And it doesn't mean you new people. It doesn't mean new followers. It only appeals to people who already follow you but are very weak, and they kind of applaud you for being militant. Okay, the number of things that I think definitely seen at some point within the liberty movement, and it's an unexhaustive list, so it can be longer and you can probably add a lot more than yourselves. So before you want to change minds, you have to bear in mind that changing someone's political opinion is as close as you get to threaten their identity. Probably religions are similar in that sense. So when you try to change someone's mind, convince people of something, you are threatening their identity. And they will take it as a threat, and they will react accordingly. If they're under siege, they'll resist. So whenever possible, don't try to go down that road and just try to appear not to want to convince them. I come back to that later. And say things that actually make sense in the context, and not just try to force something down their throat. Because when you try to change someone's convictions, I'm sorry for the obvious, but this is their belonging. This is their community. If they listen to you and they actually realize that you're right, they may lose their friends. They lose their connections to the community. I mean, someone may go home and try to convince daddy about this great new idea of freedom, or their friends, and they may fail. May succeed, but they may fail. So there's a lot of things at stake when you try to change your political opinion. So this is, of course, it doesn't really help for you to know that this is a difficult task, but it's definitely worth the task. So what you're working on is good because your influence is bigger when you have more allies. And you want to find more allies and people who kind of agree with you, and that's why you will seek out, and I come to that, what you agree on. There's a lot of things we actually agree on with. A lot of people who are mainstream in terms of their politics, a lot of things. And you have to start there. So the title of this thing would be, and if I had a presentation which I didn't prepare, it would be How to Change Minds and Not Alienate People. And let me just start with this, I think the best screenwriting tip I have ever heard. Not directly about screenwriting, but almost. So you're at home, you're a screenwriter, you're a aspiring screenwriter. You know these crazy kinds who just disappear with their laptops and they always work on something and it's so deep and so complex and so great, it's just perfect and just... And so you're that kind of person. And after like 2 weeks of intense working on that story, you go down to the pub and meet your friends and they ask you, and what are you working on? It's a screenplay, of course. And what is it about? And that's your logline. That's your one-liner. If you don't get them in the first sentence, you don't get them at all. So don't even try with this complex. It's about the complexity of a relationship with a teenage boy when he's kind of doesn't really get the world around, and he's frightened and he's kind of confused, and then his relation to his dog and how it shaped his mind, and all they will get from this is the confusion. But not the teenage boy's confusion, but you know, their own. So, and you will meet these like watery eyes, like, oh yes, really, that's what you're working on. And it doesn't help with your confidence, I can tell you that. So if you tell the best of your story, and you're not prepared to tell that story, and people look at you like you're mad and what you're working on is shit, well, you might just stop working on it. If you lose your confidence, it's not good. So you don't want to do that. But you know what your friends would, enjoy listening to. You know what they're interested in. So just, why don't you just come up with something that's snappy, something that sounds good, something they would definitely buy and have a laugh and just, say cheers and you can have the next drink. So just, arm yourself for that kind of thing and come up with a snappy one-liner. This is the dog falling in love with the cat or something, and there's some conflict in it. There's something interesting in it. Whatever, and just tell them that. And then you're good to go. And once you came up with that beautiful one-liner, tell me why you're not writing a story about that. Because that's the story people want to listen to. So this is your confusing story, and that's the story people want to listen to. And if you're capable of writing that one-liner, you should do that instead, and just leave your childhood introspection behind. So it is about knowing your audience and choosing the right message for them, what they want to listen to and what they want to hear. And so when you want to attract people who are like potential freedom lovers, who are almost like you, they just don't do economics. Does anyone happen to like Oscar Wilde? He's a great guy. Anything about his politics? Anyone? So he had this great insight about human experience in general and human interaction, and obviously he had a very good standpoint to examine that because he was an outsider. So he was very successful. He was homosexual, but it was not really legal, and he also had an affair with someone who happened to be a child, the son of a very influential person, and he was jailed for that and all that kind of thing. So he had this perfect outsider view that let him study human nature as it was. So he did great things, and great snappy one-liners. The internet is full of his quotes, and they are all great. Now, once I was researching for a novel, and I found an essay by him titled "The Soul of Man Under Socialism." To be fair, it was first titled "The Soul of Man," and I didn't see socialism when I started, so I was interested because that was the kind of thing I was researching. So he went on explaining in the essay that how this kind of self-actualization or individuation, or call it whatever you want, becoming yourself, becoming your true self, just expressing yourself or doing your true mission in life, that this kind of thing doesn't happen if you have to worry about money. If you are chased by an angry tiger, you're probably not actualizing yourself at the same time. If you don't know what you eat tomorrow, you're probably not going to write your great novel. And he went through all his friends and writers. He knew that all these people were either nesting rich already, or they had very rich patrons, and they never had to think about what to eat next, and they had servants at their disposal. So you can, call it like the better motivation theory of Maslow or whatever, but this is pretty much the same thing. So he had this great insight and greatly argued that this kind of security should be present in this person's life in order for him to go for his true mission. And his conclusion was that we have to get all these wealth that already exists in the brothers, share it equally among people, because socialism is the point where everyone has enough, and then they can go on and do their true missions. So, and I think the conclusion in the was that because socialism itself will be of value simply because it will lead to individualism. So he was kind of a libertarian individualist, but he was also a poet, and he thought that this kind of socialism would be economically viable. Now, do we dismiss Oscar Wilde? And would you sit down and talk to him just because he was a socialist? Because these are the kind of people we are talking about, not to convince mainstream people who otherwise would completely agree with us if they gave some more thought to economics. Or there were the hippies. I mean, you have a bunch of guys who had this crude awakening of society when they were sent out to Vietnam. That's when they realized that society exists and it has a role for them. It demands them to kind of die for something that is stupid. And that just sent them to the street. They burned their IDs. Rings a bell? And they completely denied these roles of society. And that's the pure freedom out there. But they didn't do economics. And they didn't have an economic background. That was just hijacked by Marxists. It was just a very great move by the socialists themselves that they somehow got to associate with them, because it's a very easy conclusion to jump to that if everyone is given a certain amount of money, everyone would be happy and whatever. But they were kind of libertarians, actually. So you really have to talk to these people because they all mean well. No one wants to kill humanity. No one wants to destroy the economy. They all mean well. It's just the tools we disagree on. So a couple of days ago, I met this girl. She was very nice and very friendly, this really warm person. And after like an hour of conversation, she said something like, "Oh, I hate these homosexuals." And it's really like someone you wouldn't believe would say such a nasty thing. Would say something like, "I hate homosexuals." And what can you do in this situation? Like possible outcomes that you call her like a homophobe or something that ends in an ism. Or point out that you're just calling for government to change someone's behavior and can lecture her. How would you feel if your sexual behavior would be disapproved by the government and you would be criminalized for that or something? And there are all kinds of things that can go wrong. And I just kept listening and asked her why. And she went on a rant about people who make out in public and this whatever thing, and I pointed out that I actually hate heterosexual people who make out in public. And yes, me too. So what if they do it at home? I don't care. So, sorry, I'm kind of a scientist. I just analyze the situation. Is it possible that you have a problem with public displays of affection? And turns out she did. So her problem was people who would just, I don't know, be very open about their sexual life in public. That happens even in Schöneberg, that's the gay district of Berlin, and that's how she started to talk about it. And turns out she's not actually a nasty person, and if you tell her that what she's saying is a bit like off, it's a very nasty thing to call your government to punish other people, and if that were worse, then she would actually agree. So first of all, you have to listen to your audience, and you have to know them because, well, for at least 3 reasons. They are going to complain about something. They see a problem. And if you don't listen to that problem, how are they supposed to believe that you actually know what their problem is? Even if you know what their problem is, they won't believe that you know it until they express themselves to you perfectly. So sometimes you just have to listen and help them express it perfectly. Otherwise, you're just not credible. Of course, you cannot really let it turn into a whining session. That's one of the risks. And people don't often know what their actual problem is. So you have to be very insightful that way. And sometimes they don't even know consciously what worries them most. But at least they must give it a try. And also you want to know, and it will probably come up during conversation, what shaped their opinions. So why do they think what they think? Because that's where you go through. Also, and then most importantly, we often agree on what is wrong. We agree on the problem. And for example, corporations, that keeps coming up all the time. So that's someone who like hates capitalism and even wears something that says I hate capitalism or something, so you have this problem. And then you ask them to specify what exactly that problem is, and they turn out, yes, because this big business, whatever, they just go hand in hand with government and they make the rules and whatever. Okay, then. I agree that's a problem, but I think the politicians are also at fault. So we agree on the problem, and I can now explain that I think the government is not perfectly innocent in these things, and we can end up agreeing actually. So what they mean by capitalism is what we say crony capitalism. You don't have to use the definitions or introduce a new word. You can just explain this is the problem. When I say enterprise, I don't mean a corporation. That's it. I mean someone who's actually creating value and not just wishing for privileges. And okay, and the other thing is whenever you try to convince someone, you are, like it or not, you're selling yourself. You are part of the package you're offering. It's like a commercial. They don't only offer the product, they also offer the lifestyle or the mood that they associate with the product. It's more important than the product itself. So if you present an argument and you come across as a very nasty, angry, paranoid person, or not very knowledgeable, or very eager to convince or something, then it just kind of kills your argument. It's not rational. I know it's not rational. You can present the perfect argument and appear fearful or angry, and it will just disqualify you. So, but what you want to say, you're most likely to agree with people you want to be. You want to identify with that person. So if you're so cool, you're so stylish, you can smile, you can actually have an argument with someone and be generous about it. You can appear like graceful in the face of this other argument, and that's something people want to be themselves. Because when you say something, it tells something about the subject you're talking about, but it speaks volumes about you, and it's more accurate actually. So you tell me something about this projector, And you may or may not be right about the projector, but what you said tells a lot about you, your mood, your background, or anything. And okay. You also want to appear to have a sense of humor. I think that is something very missing from this movement. That, of course, if you don't have a sense of humor, you cannot really fake it. But there's something that can be done. You can kind of mock yourself. If you're not brave enough to actually make jokes about yourself, or appear funny, or appear not completely serious, or not this kind of grown-up person, that it tells something about you, which it's very hard to put a finger on it. But it tells that you are not confident enough, you are insecure, you are not generous enough, and you cannot afford to look funny, even a little bit. And that's not the kind of person you want to appear to. So humor is important for a lot of reasons. And the other thing is people get the irony. I come back to that, how important it is not to think that people are stupid. They're not stupid. They do get the irony. And if you just don't think that don't be condescending to them, because they can sense it. And that just, again, disqualifies your argument completely, and you're just wasting your time. There are a few subjects that are kind of a minefield for me, because I did so much research in the area, and I may just get too vague or too much information out there. So let me know if it's hard to follow. But I'm sure you've read some parts of the economics and philosophy of trust and the literature done in trust. In economics, for instance, you can put a price tag on the lack of trust within society. So if I don't trust you and we cannot enter into an agreement with each other, we need someone else to countersign it. It's the lawyer's cost and the accountant's cost and the policing cost of society. So you can actually put a price tag on it. But more importantly, the lower the level of trust within society, the bigger the government. And all these people's vices and insecurities and fears of each other will feed the government. So when you're libertarian, you actually have to kind of assume that people are to be trusted. And when I say trust, I mean two things. One is that they don't want to hurt you, they're not malevolent, they're not out there to commit crimes. And the other thing is that they're not stupid. That's the kind of two kinds of distrust I'm going to talk about. Are people stupid or smart? So actually I'm going to argue that it doesn't matter. Smartness is the most democratically distributed commodity, because no one ever complained that they didn't have enough or they had less than the other. And it really, what concerns you as a thing about society is not how many people are smart and how many are stupid or whatever. It's not even the proportion, like which is the majority or who am I talking to or whatever. Is that the incentives that society creates for them, what kind of mindset they are put into. Is it their stupid mindset? Is it when they're fearful and make bad decisions and short-term considerations? Or is it when they are actually smart? And when you actually make an argument, you can decide it for them. This is what's important. You know, there are these, there's a chicken and egg problem. Are commercial television stupid because people are stupid and they had to go down to that level? Are people stupid because commercial televisions are so stupid? And of course, both. But as a politician, if anyone ever wants to be a politician or just someone communicating ideas, you are responsible for the mindset of the person you're talking to. If you put them in a stupid mindset or something, then they're actually going to be stupid, and that's not good for you. And as a libertarian, you better argue that people can be made more intelligent and more responsible if you treat them that way. And you know, when you're a screenwriter and you try to write a scene that's so simple, that's so pure, and then someone comes and reads the script and they don't see it. The script is a different kind of genre; it's very hard to read, and they get scared that you didn't say the conclusion out loud. You must get the dialogue saying it out loud. Otherwise, people wouldn't realize what's going on or what you want to say. No, people are smart enough to actually realize what's going on. And the more intelligent the screenwriter thinks you are, the more you enjoy the movie. Those shitty movies that you would just dismiss as amateurish, just try to trust people that they actually have enough intelligence. And they will have enough intelligence. The other thing is, what I'm going to call anger, but it's all kinds of things. It's sulking because of people out there who don't agree with you, wanting to punish them, like wanting to eliminate people who have a different opinion. It comes through as fear. You're afraid of them, and you don't want to appear fearful. And it's like an argument done by a 12-year-old is an uncommonly intelligent 12-year-old. Like, don't you understand what I mean? It's because you're stupid, that's why you don't, and you forget to say what you mean. You just try to, take them to their senses. No, don't be angry. People are trustworthy and people are smart if only you communicate them as such. And also never tell them your conclusion. Let them say that out loud for you. Just become, you can write a 2-hour-long script and never say out loud the rationale of the story or the lesson that you wanted to tell. You have to make them. Did you know that there was this research just recently published, and all they did was putting people through a math test, like high school math test. And there were 2 groups. In one, they just did the test. And the other one, before the test, they were asked about their gender. Please state whether you're male or female. And women in the second group performed like 30% worse. Before they made the test, they were reminded that they're female, and they know about the cliché in society that females are worse than men, unless it's about household stuff. And so they perform worse. So this is how much it matters what kind of mindset you put people into. It's very easy. You can ask them of their achievements, and they get proud of themselves, and that's the kind of mindset you want to talk to. Or you can talk to them about worrying, like, have you paid your bills this month? And that's a completely different person you're talking to. Politicians do that a lot. Think about populism. First they go out and tell you that it's terrible, the energy prices and whatever, it's terrible, and then you're a frightened little thing by the time they finish with the role, and they come as great paternalists to protect you, and you get an infantile child. That's how populism works. There are these roles, which I mentioned before. There's a number of things that comes to mind, like roles within the family, that you're a child, at the same time you can be a parent, and you can be a sister. There are roles like the employee, your employer, you can be a Christian. Whichever self I address will answer me. It's not a very difficult thing. Even like age is a role. Age-appropriate behavior, age-appropriate clothes. And so in normal life, you can escape from one role to another, and that kind of keeps you sane. So you're an employer here, and then you're a girlfriend at home or something. It kind of keeps you sane. If you're stuck in one of these roles for an amount of time, or like weeks or years on end, it's either sacked. Oh, sorry, it's a cult in English. I'm getting confused. And you, of course, heard of the Stanford prison experience. That's a couple of weeks spent in a role, which is you're not a prisoner and you're not a guard, but you spend a couple of weeks playing that role, and it just creates evil. Or think about how, I don't know, like young mothers just get their child, it's like 24-hour duty, and then they go insane in a couple of months because they are mothers from, midnight to midnight every day. And that's just not the kind of mindset you want. So you can play around with these things, but the most important thing is, what, as I mentioned before, is that you don't want to talk to people without these roles. That's why I mentioned writing is good, because it's the individual reading, unless you address them as, I don't know, mothers or millennials or something. But when you're talking to people, you want to talk to individuals. That's the only kind of self that is open enough for a message. And it's the least self-conscious kind of mindset. It's an observer's mindset. And what you want to do is to kind of invoke their self that is proud of themselves. You want to talk to a person who is proud of him or herself, who is thinking about the future, forward-looking. Because if they start worrying, if they are fearful, they will make short-term decisions. They don't think about the future. Think on a national level. You get people who just don't want to hear what happens to the, I don't know, national security. How do you call that? Yeah, it's national security. And what happens with that or the environment or something, because they are fearful little creatures at that moment. And they don't have the emotional generosity to think about the future. And you have to get them outside, because any kind of fear is bad for you. People who are afraid, and by afraid I mean things like worried, anxious, self-conscious, insecurity, chased by a tiger. It means that this person is at its best, at its worst. So it doesn't matter whose fault it is. If you're afraid, you're an asshole. So that's the short of the story. So when people are afraid, they yearn for safety. You don't want that as a libertarian. You don't want to put people in that mindset. When you're afraid, they want to stay in their comfort zones. That's straightforward. So they're not really open. They're completely deaf to new ideas. And they completely lack the emotional generosity to even consider your side. And that happens to be the kind of person I just mentioned that you don't want to appear to. So that's the other side of the coin. So also there, it's very, very hard to manipulate people that way. I mean, there are a number of people out there who instinctively know how to address an audience, how to do public speaking, unlike me, for instance, how to put you in the right mindset emotionally, or how to just command your attention, which I cannot. And there are people who learn it by practice and by reading a lot about it, but it's really hard. So being in a conversation when you're actually trying to manipulate someone and you're just practicing it, it's not going to work. So just waste your first attempt to people who don't actually want to convince or not to be important, because it's very hard. I'm not saying I can do that. I practice that in writing, that's different. In person conversation, that is a completely different story. It's not going to come to you naturally. But whenever in doubt, just love people, because they will notice that. If you're positive about people, if you just really like them, if you find that thing that's likable about them, you don't have to say it. You can actually, it works. I mean, flattery always works, even if it's completely irrational. So if I flatter you about your long, beautiful blonde hair, which is obviously stupid, it's beautiful, it's just so perfect. Oh my God. It goes down to your waist and it's perfect and everything, and it will still work. So they notice that they assert that people are more generous, even if they hear flattery like that. It's completely nonsense. And so just love people in general. If you're not in the mood, you're probably not going to convince anyone. You're not going to change minds. But it happens. In the morning, you're friendly. In the evening, you're tired. So, but you have to do these things when you actually like people. But you have to write your articles when you actually like people, when you're in the mood, when you're in a positive mood, or at least revise what you've written before. When you're in your good mindset. So try to find out what is the kind of thing that makes you a good person, like your best stuff, and I'm not me. Sorry. So by good person, I don't mean some huge altruistic whatever thing. I mean your best self, the kind of self that you want to present to, the kind of self that you're proud of. And it's actually true. It's not just a projection, that it's like your best stuff. And if you can just trigger it somehow, that's great. If not, just wait for it to happen and you do great things. Do your most important stuff there. Write your articles there. And to sum up, how to convince people, in short, do not convince people. That's not what you do. They will convince themselves. if you just provide enough material facts or just the motivation, or you just appear to be someone they want to be like, and you will never be able to come up with an argument better than they can come up with themselves. And did you notice that with religions, that they always have a big fat nothing at the core? It's because they couldn't explain it to you. There's nothing that would convince you as much as nothing. It's because. You have to be because. And then we build this castle on it. That's kind of works. And even movies are more convincing and can deliver a message when they don't set out to deliver that message. So they are talking about an unrelated subject. Talk about a guy who has problems with girls. And it just happens to deliver another message at the side. Something that's not necessarily to do with politics, but something deeper or something else. But you're open to it because you think you're going to listen to a story of a guy. And that's how to lower people's defenses. You don't want to trigger the resistance that comes with trying to convince people too hard and sitting down with them. You're not a salesperson in that way that you have to close this deal today. It's not going to happen today, it's going to happen in the next season of the series, and you won't be there. So whoever triggered that conversion won't be there. And they probably have to go through some kind of water before it happens. So what you do instead, you create the need. Good salespeople just create the need. Has it ever happened to you that you were watching television, you didn't know you need something, and then you saw a stupid commercial and suddenly you just couldn't live without the object? They created a need that wasn't there before. And still isn't there, but it just reminded you of something. So selling anything to a person means that pointing out that he needs it. If you want to sell freedom, you have to make them want to be free. You cannot force them to be free. Every kind of argument or tool that would make them obedient just doesn't work with this kind of thing. You have to make them want to be free. And that's actually important. It's actually good for them, so it's the good product we're selling. But you cannot force them to be free. If you try to force them, if you just provoke some kind of sabotage, so you make them go through the motions of kind of freedom, or force them to live in a democratic society somewhere, and they will just prove you that it doesn't work with us, we are different, kind of thing. So now, if they don't have this desire within, you cannot set them free. If there is, you can help them, but ultimately they're going to convince themselves. So, and it normally doesn't happen through economics. So that's probably not the door you try to get in through. And so you raise their interest, you tell them what convinced you. It's very hard, actually. No one really knows what was this stupid little thing that convinced them. You can give them a few facts. You can appear to be a nice person they want to become. You can show a great image of liberty and freedom. But ultimately, they have to want to be free. And when that happens, they will come back and ask about the economics. And that's the only way to teach people economics. I mean, otherwise it doesn't work. So let them want more. Thank you for that.